Good evening, everyone. It's Eloise Hendricks, and I'm here bringing you the news from Paris. It's 39 degrees, April 20th, 1848. If you recall, back in 1846, a serious famine led to a lack of food in a lot of Europe, and which caused food prices to rise, but wages remained the same. As a result, consumers bought less goods, causing companies to bring in less revenues, and thus these companies had to lay off many workers. In this atmosphere of rising unemployment and prices, revolts have arisen throughout Europe, especially in France. In France, the middle-class liberals of doctors, lawyers, merchants, and other bourgeoisie have initiated a banquet campaign in which the liberals are giving speeches at banquets in French cities with the goal of extending suffrage. However, on February 22nd of this year, 1848, Parisian officials, worried by the possibility of protests, canceled one of the dinners, thereby sparking demonstrations from the liberal members of the middle class and the working class in the streets of Paris. Furthermore, the National Guard, which consists largely of the bourgeois Parisian citizens, and the regiment of the French army in Paris, both abandoned service to the current king, Louis Philippe, and joined the protests. Although Louis Philippe has tried to abdicate the throne and cede the throne to his grandson, the workers and other protesters don't believe these attempted reforms are sufficient, and they have been bursting into the parliamentary order and actually have forced Louis Philippe to flee. After the king has fled, the liberals have declared the rise of the Second Republic in France on the 24th of February of this year. Known as the February Revolution, this was actually the end of the French monarchy and the creation of another republic in France, in which there was universal male suffrage. The founding of the Second French Republic has also helped to spark other liberal and worker revolts throughout Europe. In this month, the April elections of 1848, however, the moderates are regaining a majority over the liberals in the provisional government. And as of recently, the provisional government that's been overseeing the Second Republic has actually been replaced by an executive commission. This has faced some revolts also by the workers in Paris. But we'll see how this plays out. Thank you very much for coming. And now to Paige, coming to you live from Italy.
Thank you, Eloise, for that eloquent introduction of France. Well, welcome to the beautiful place of Italy. But unfortunately, not so beautiful with the terror that's going around here. Revolts began against foreign powers of the Austrians, and that led to wanting their own nationality and history and brotherhood. All these people desired a very liberal government. Giuseppe Mazzini was one of the main people who built Rome of the People, which was a short-lived Roman republic here. He also formed the Young Italy, which is a secret society dedicated to the Republic of Italy. It inspired people to build an independent Italian nation by giving some of the church's land holdings to poor peasants and causing imprisonment and insane asylum reforms, as well as freedom of the press and secular education. Some of the issues regarding being controlled by foreign powers were since Italy has been very prosperous, especially in places like Lombardy and Venetia, they were heavily taxed because of this, which caused some form of protest and riot. And also recently this year, 1848, tobacco riots occurred where people demonstrated against the high taxes of Lombardy's Austrian authorities to maintain a monopoly of tobacco. Because of all these protests and number of fatalities and injuries, they started to protest against the Austrians. And initially the Austrians were surprised by this and were unable to fight back. But then eventually they retook Italy, and then the Austrians, with help from other foreign powers, took Italy back from them. But although this was technically a failed revolution, it actually caused a very advanced constitution and a lot of liberalism that occurred that wasn't necessarily as evident during this time period, during now. Back to Eloise for more.
Thank you so much, Paige. Back to Eloise Hendricks in Paris. So as I mentioned, in the April elections, the moderates have regained the majority over the provincial government and replaced it with an executive commission. To an extent, this has signified that the revolution of 1848 has not been as successful as intended. We've noticed that though the workers have been rebelling, a lot of their revolts have been put down. And although universal male suffrage was gained during the Revolution of 1848 in France, also known as the February Revolution, there have not been the full extent of Republican extension of liberties and democracy that was intended. We noticed later on also that the rise of Louis Napoleon, known as Napoleon III, was elected the first president of the Second French Republic. When he was prevented from running a second term, however, he organized a coup and took the throne as emperor. So we do see that eventually the Second French Republic will fall, but it did manage to establish universal manhood suffrage. Thank you, and we're going to go to Mike to report.
Well, I'll tell you what, Eloise, it's getting heated out here in Hungary. There's a revolution kind of unrelated to the other ones, independent of the other revolutions that you've previously mentioned, but there is a revolution out here in Hungary. You may remember back in 1795, Ignac Martinovic kind of educated the people about how the aristocracy was the enemy of mankind and supported the idea of a social contract, kind of planted the seed that would later lead to the revolution. He was eventually executed along with 6 other Jacobins by the state for trying to incite a revolt among the Hungarian serfs. Hungary has been kind of the victim of absolute despotism, despite a kind of loose relationship with Austria in recent years. It's not the most intimate of relationships, but they still have felt the effects, and this is why their revolution is here. Kind of an example of that is back in 1823, Emperor Francis I enacted a war tax on a draft without consulting the legislative body of the state, which is the Diet first. In addition, more recently, the growing minority of liberals in the lower chamber of the Diet, similar to the French Third Estate, has led to the popularity of the Liberal Party among the common people. And big reason why it's gained a lot of popularity in recent years was the arrest of Liberal Party leaders Louis Kossuth and Miklos Wesselendyi by the emperor, and this had cited a lot of liberal reforms in recent years in the Diet. Like the French Revolution, the Liberal Party has kind of been split into 2 sections, the extremists and the centralists. But right before the revolution happened, they were united by Deke's 10 points, kind of similar to the universal rights of man. And this culminated in the sweep of the 1847 Diet elections by the Liberals, which resulted in the growing power of Louis Kossuth, who would eventually take over. After hearing of back to 1848, after hearing of the French February Revolution, subsequent revolutions in Vienna, Buda, and Pest, 2 different cities, caused the king to submit to the demands of the liberals, which eventually led to a constitutional monarchy. It is 1848. I don't really think the constitutional monarchy is going to last that long, but who knows? It's 1848. As for the spirit of the revolution, I think it's really great for Europe. Very democratically charged, similar to the French Revolution, but didn't really reach the same, didn't really get to the more extreme extent that the French Revolution did. Not as much brutality. For example, the revolutions in Budapest and Vienna had no bloodshed at all. They were completely peaceful. So this is an example of an effective attempt at reform by the common people that didn't use violence, and was a step in the right direction for Europe.